When about did that happen?
I don't remember exactly.
Sure. So this was before she left her employment. Is that right?
Um, I don't know the specifics about her leaving her employment.
But as far as you know, she was still employed at the time that you made a recommendation to work in a cancer position with Froedtert South.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I'd like to know a little bit more about, and I want the judge to know a little bit more about, was the fact that there were other complaints about Dr. Savadison by other people. And Dr. Savadison also made complaints about others as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what your history is with the problems with Dr. Savadison?
Like what specifics? Like, is it specifics or just my time with being there with Dr. Sivadasan?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, working with Dr. Sivadasan, as I previously stated, that she would yell and complain, and she would blame others for any issues, any type of issue that was going on, any problems with patients, if anything went wrong with a patient, she would blame staff. If anything went wrong with a patient on the floors, she would blame the nursing on the floors. If there was a problem with medications, I remember that she would call and yell at the pharmacists that work here. In the OR, if something didn't go her way, the way she, she would blame everybody. She blamed everybody for any issues she had. She yelled all the time, most of the time. I don't have anything else. I know she complained and blamed all the time.
Ms. Krakowski, you still with us? Ms. Krakowski? I see that you're still listed as being in our hearing room. You perhaps mute it? No? Mr. Kelly, if you're still with us, do you have the ability to text her quickly to find out if there's an issue?
Yes, ma'am. I'll try
Thank
right
you.
away. Judge, I've sent her a text message or two, but I've not gotten any response yet.
Okay.
Looks like maybe she was disconnected.
I'm sorry, I lost
there,
connection. Yep.
okay. We hear you again. Did you hear
Okay.
the response that the witness gave?
No, I did not.
Okay. Why did you ask whatever question you asked last again?
Well, I'd have to go back to the record on that.
I'll let you know what my notes are. The complainant's response to your question is that Dr. Sivadathan would yell, complain, blame others for any type of issues. She would blame others for problems with patients. If something went wrong, if something went wrong on the floor, she would blame the nursing staff. If something went wrong, if something went wrong in the operating room, she'd blame the operating staff. She didn't know what else to say.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm getting text messages. All right, so let's complete this testimony before we take a break. But here's what I would like to know with regard to the relationship, if you could explain a little bit more about Dr. Sivadathan and your relationship and Charnay Sherry's relationship in terms of your characteristic of the problems and what your opinion is with regard to the relationship issues.
Between Dr. Sivadathan and Charnay?
In particular, yes.
Do you understand the question?
What was that, Amanda?
Do you understand the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they had disagreements about patient treatment, I remember. Again, I don't remember specifics. I know Dr. Sivadathan was, if there was issues, like I said before, there was issues on patients, rounding on patients or whatever, or patients that came into the clinic. If there was issues, she would blame her staff. She would blame her mid-levels. And between her and Charnay, they had disagreements. I don't remember specifics, but I know that there was disagreements on patient care.
And how were you aware of that?
Just overhearing them.
Okay.
Dr. Sivadathan coming and talking to Charnay. Our office was quite small, so a lot of the conversations were heard.
And you're not aware of any specific complaint that was made by Charnay Sherry?
Specific complaint?
Well, you said you overheard things maybe that were going on during the course of employment, which is what you testified to, but you're not aware of any specific complaint that was made?
Can you clarify a little bit, Ms. Krakowski, what you
Sure.
mean by a specific complaint? An official complaint or?
Right. Did you have an official complaint that you're aware of that you knew about, or was it a complaint that you overheard?
We had complaints. She had complaints about her. I don't remember if I have anything in writing, or I know she worked a lot. She complained she worked a lot. she worked a lot. Dr. Sividasan wouldn't round on her patients sometimes, and Charnay worked a lot of days straight without a break, and Dr. Sividasan wouldn't follow up with the patients. Charnay would actually be the one who did a lot of that.
But what I'm asking is, what I'm asking is, did you know of any complaint that Charnay Sherry made to anybody in management at Froedtert South?
I know she complained, but I don't remember specifics.
So if you knew she made a complaint, it would be something that you heard from other people about.
I don't remember.
And did Dr. Sividasan also make complaints about Charnay Sherry?
Yes.
So they were disagreeing and complaining about each other. Is that a correct characterization?
Yes.
All right. So the other piece I wanted to bring in here is that you were called into a meeting and it involved you, Nick College, and you wanted to have a meeting because you were upset with Dr. Sividasan, and I wanted to just understand that a little bit better for the judge's purposes. There was a meeting that you talked about that you were able to help out with regard to your calling the meeting.
Yes, I remember a specific incident where Dr. Sividasan called my counterpart in the cardiology department to ask her questions or about something that she could have called me about. And I became upset at that time. And then I became upset because she didn't call me to ask me, as me being her office, the person in the office there. She called someone from a different department that was in the same position as me, but in cardiology. And I didn't know what was going on, so I got quite upset, and I did come down to HR.
Okay. And what happened next?
That's when I believe we ended up. I don't remember exactly how long after that, but that's when we had that meeting with Susan, Nick, Michelle Clemens, Rita Chase, Charnay, and I. We met in the cardiology conference room right after that.
And do you remember that involved other opportunities for Charnay Sherry to work for Froedtert South?
That's the meeting where Susan offered to move us and offered Charnay whatever position was available, which was a family practice position, mid-level.
And can you expand on that a little bit?
She offered her the family practice position, but I know Charnay became upset because she worked so hard to work in, her passion was working in cardiothoracic and with the heart. And so that was when I think Susan told her to think about it. And that's all I remember.
When you say Susan told her to think about that, can you just expand on that a little bit?
Charnay wasn't sure because I don't think she wanted to stay in cardiothoracic, but I mean, her specialty was cardiothoracic and the heart, and that's where she did all her training. So she wanted to stay in that. And she was, I think, when the only position that we had available at that time was the family practice one, she became upset, but I don't remember. I know that Susan offered her that position, and she gave her some time to think about it.
So, in your recollection, Susan Ventura told Charnay Sherry to think about accepting another position within Froedtert South?
Yes.
Do you remember her offering any other positions to Charnay Sherry?
At that meeting, no. I just remember the family practice one at that meeting.
At any other time, do you remember her offering any other positions?
I don't.
Okay. I'm just looking through my notes here. All right. So overall, your opinion, I'd like here for the judge's sake, how Dr. Savadison felt and respected Charnay Sherry and what her feelings were that you knew, or at least her respect was for her during the time that they worked together. Could you explain that?
She thought that Dr. Savadison thought very highly of Charnay to the point where I think she was jealous.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Charnay was really good. She was good clinically. She was excellent, and she would catch things that Dr. Savadison wouldn't catch, and that would make Dr. Savadison upset. And I think she had some type of jealousy towards Charnay because Charnay was really good at what she did.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
Okay, is there any redirect, Mr. Olson?
Yes, thank you. You talked about a personality conflict. At the point that you had expressed in writing that you needed to get the hell out of the department, I think was your term, was that based on merely a personality conflict?
Between who?
Between you and Dr. Savadison? Or was it something more than that?
Personality conflict? It was more than that. It was how she treated people.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that from what you observed, Dr. Savitazan had a conflict with almost everyone she encountered in the workplace?
Yes.
And Ms. Sherry's complaints about patient treatment, that was not merely a personality conflict, was it?
The patient treatment?
Right.
Um,
When Sherry complained about Savitazan's patient treatment, that wasn't due to a mere personality conflict, was it?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, anything further?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe that we are finished getting testimony from Ms. Alici, and she can be released from her subpoena, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could go ahead and leave the meeting, I just have a few things I want to go through with the parties. Thank you. All right, so before we break for lunch, I'd just like to go through the exhibits. I have them, all the ones that were offered, written down, and I just, let's go through and receive or object. Okay, so the first exhibit I have was what was complainants 18, started on bait stamp, ERD bait stamp 241. It is the May 9th of 2018 text message. I assume you want this introduced into evidence, Mr. Olson,
Yes.
or accepted as an exhibit, I should say. Okay, is there any
Yeah.
objection to the receipt of that exhibit, Ms. Krakowski?
No.
Okay, and I guess, you know, should we go through these one by one, or will there be no objections to the receipt of any of the exhibits that were brought up by Mr. Olson, Ms. Krakowski?
The only thing I would ask is that I would talk to my client before I confirm that.
Okay,
So I don't think
so should,
there will be any issues, but I just want to confirm that.
okay, do you, all right, I guess, why don't you do that then? We'll break for lunch, and rather than go through every exhibit, if I can just obviously accept all of them, that'll be easier. Otherwise, when we come back from lunch, we'll have to go through each exhibit, get the objection, and if there is one, and you know, deal with the exhibit at that point. So it's 12:18. Will 1 hour be sufficient for lunch?
Yes.
It's fine with me. Yes.
Okay, so why don't we okay, it's 12:18. Why don't we say 1:15? Okay, start at 1:15.
Okay.
That's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don't forget to turn off your sound and video.
Thank you.
Will do.
All right, we're back on the record. This is the afternoon of, I'm sorry, I should say, this is case number 2018-02354, Sherry versus Froedtert South. This is the third day of hearing. We are now in the afternoon of that third day, March 16th, 2021. Before we went off the record, there was some discussion as to the exhibits that had been introduced by the complainant this morning. The respondent has stated they do not object to any one of those exhibits. So very quickly, I'm going to receive those exhibits, and that would be complainants exhibit 18, complainants exhibit 19, complainants exhibit 20, complainants exhibit 21, complainants exhibit 22, complainants exhibit 25, complainants exhibit 26, complainants exhibit 27, complainants exhibit 28, complainants exhibit 33, complainants exhibit 35, complainants exhibit 37, complainants exhibit 40, complainants exhibit 45, complainants exhibit 46. All right, all those exhibits will be admitted into the record. In addition, I do have a list of exhibits that I'm maintaining for this hearing, and that lists not only the complainant's exhibit number, but also the bait stamps for all those exhibits, and that this list of exhibits will become part of the record and can be, I should say, when the time comes, if the parties need to refer to it, it can be given to them as well. All right. All right. So moving on to more testimony, Mr. Olson, your next witness.
The complainant calls Dr. Trimark.
Okay. Sorry, there's just some housekeeping things. I'm just adding you onto our records here, Mr. Trimark, or Dr. Trimark. Okay. Dr. Trimark.
Yes, hello.
Would you please raise your right hand?
Okay.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Mr. Olson, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Trimark. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your background. First of all, where do you work?
Yeah, so I work at Froedtert South in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
What is your position or positions there?
So I serve both as a practicing internist and as the Chief Medical Information Officer.
All right, and what are your job duties as the Chief Medical, did you say Information Officer?
Yes. Those duties primarily surround the implementation and adoption of our medical informatics system that we use, and in addition to ensure quality outcomes when the system is used.
And during what time period have you been working at Froedtert South?
Since February of 1998 until present.
And to whom do you report in your job?
So I report to Susan Ventura.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, Susan Ventura.
And were you reporting directly to Susan Ventura as of 2018?
Yes, I was.
And did you work with Dr. Savitazan in 2018?
Yes.
Could you describe the interaction that the two of you had in your respective positions? In other words, what was the context within which the two of you worked together?
The main context I had was in my CMIO role. So during that time, Dr. Savitazan implemented something called the STS quality database, where you measure outcomes related to surgery. And in working with her both to get that implemented and then to use the data, I worked with her to improve post-operative blood sugar control. And so it was a quality improvement project.
And did that data measure mortality rates?
No, it just measured a blood sugar control in the 24 hours after surgery.
Was there data that through the course of your job that measured mortality rates in relation to heart procedures or cardio procedures?
The STS database is used for that, and that data is submitted to the department chairman, not to me.
Is that something that you would review in the course of your job?
No.
In the STS database, is that shared among other institutions?
Yes, it is, and it's how they compare each other's results.
What's the reason for sharing that data with other institutions?
It's usually used so that you have an idea how well you're performing compared to the other organizations like you, and then identify opportunities for improvement.
Are there areas of the data that you reviewed concerning Dr. Savitazan's procedures that caused you concern?
So that was not my role to review all of the STS database. I focused just on the blood sugar control and worked with her to improve that aspect.
Was there data that you reviewed concerning Dr. Savitazan's work that caused you concern?
Objection, it is a vague question. Caused concern, I'm not sure what that means.
Do you want to, do you understand the question, Dr. Trimark? Or do you want it clarified?
Well, no, I was concerned about the blood sugar control too, as was Dr. Sivadasan, and that's why we worked on improving it.
Did you have a meeting with Nick Galich around June 1st of 2018 concerning Dr. Savitazan?
I honestly don't remember that.
Okay, do you remember discussing with anyone in administration complaints about Dr. Savitazan?
You know, I primarily would have had a conversation with Susan Ventura about that, but that would be it.
Was Nick Galich present when that discussion took place?
I cannot remember.
Do you remember your conversation with Ms. Ventura occurring in June of 2018?
So I can't say it was June of 2018. All I can say is there was a conversation.
Did you have more than one conversation with Ms. Ventura concerning complaints about Dr. Savitazan?
So, yeah, I can say there was one or at the most.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? It kind of broke up your audio.
Sure, one or two conversations at the most.
And what were the complaints about Dr. Savitazan that you discussed with Ms. Ventura?
So just to be clear, I didn't raise, to her complaints about Dr. Sivadasan.
Okay. Did you discuss complaints about Dr. Sivadasan with Ms. Ventura?
Yes.
And those complaints originated from whom?
So the complaints, again, I can't tell you everyone that they originated from, but the complaints originated from subordinates of hers.
Okay, and was one of those subordinates Ms. Aligi?
I'm not sure who that is.
Bessa?
Bessa, yes, I know who Bessa is. And yes.
And was another of the individuals who complained about Dr. Savitazan Charnay Sherry?
Yes.
And were there additional individuals who complained about Dr. Savitazan?
Yeah, beyond the two that you've mentioned, that's all that I'm aware of.
All right, and did they complain about simply or mere personality conflicts, or was it something more than that?
So what do you mean by personality conflict?
Well, just that they weren't getting along together, or was there something more substantive that they complained about that Dr. Savitazan was doing that was wrong?
Yeah, so in their relationships, there definitely was conflict between them and Dr. Sivadasan, primarily surrounding the way they were being treated by Dr. Sivadasan.
Did you understand that there were a number of individuals who had conflicts with Dr. Sivadasan?
I was under the belief that there were more, but I was not familiar with the particular people or instances.
And did you receive information that Dr. Sivadasan was abusive toward the employees that she worked with?
Objection to the word abusive. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
I don't think the witness can possibly know that either.
Why don't you rephrase?
Do you know what the term abusive means, sir?
I do. It can take many forms.
Okay. Were there any forms of abuse that were related to you attributed to Dr. Sivadasan's treatment of her coworkers?
So I would have been aware of verbal abuse.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, I would have been aware of verbal abuse.
Okay. And what was the worst form of verbal abuse that you learned of?
So by that I mean speaking in a disrespectful or condescending manner.
Were you aware that she yelled at the employees?
Yes, I was.
Were you told that she would drop the proverbial F-bomb on a daily basis?
I would be aware of that, yes.
Did you observe some of that treatment yourself, not necessarily directed at you, but in your presence?
I did not.
Did you confirm the veracity of the complaints that you received?
I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt the veracity of the complaints you received?
No.
And when you spoke to Susan Ventura about the conduct by Dr. Sivadasan, did you ask her to take any specific action?
So, again, to be clear, when I spoke with Susan Ventura, she initiated the conversation with me.
I see. And did you have a meeting with her on the topic?
Yes,
Where was that meeting held?
in her office.
How long was the meeting?
Not long, maybe less than a half hour.
Was it recorded in some manner?
Not that I'm aware of.
As precisely as you can recall, what did Ms. Ventura say to you and what did you say to her during that meeting?
Ms. Ventura, Susan, said she was aware that the relationship with Dr. Sivadasan and with Charnay was not going well, that there was conflict. And so her goal in bringing me in was to have me, first of all, sit down and talk with Charnay and then talk with Dr. Sivadasan to see if I could learn the nature of the current relational conflict and get a sense for could it be repaired. So I was brought in for that purpose.
What else was discussed between you and Ms. Ventura during that conversation?
I would have been aware of, Dr. Sivadasan's, behavior, and so I went. So in terms of the being verbally abusive, I would have been made aware of that as well.
And did Ms. Ventura give examples of Dr. Sivadasan's verbal abuse?
Yeah, so perhaps one example would have been shared, but not a long list.
And during that conversation with Ms. Ventura, were you told that there were clinical concerns regarding Dr. Savitizan's treatment of patients?
No, I was not.
Did you learn on a subsequent date of clinical concerns regarding Dr. Savitizan's treatment of patients?
Yes, I did.
From what source or sources did you receive that information?
I received that from my meeting with Charnay.
Do you remember anything else that was discussed between you and Ms. Ventura during that 30-minute meeting?
The only other thing I remember was Susan's concern. You get an impression at meetings like that. The impression I took away, she was very concerned to try and make the relationship between Charnay and Dr. Sivadosan work. So, other than that, I don't remember anything else.
And so what did you do to prepare for your meetings with the two individuals, if anything?
The first meeting was with Charnay, and I guess what I did was I prepared myself by realizing I want Charnay to have a space to talk, and I want to make sure that I have an opportunity to hear and understand what her concern is and how she's feeling. Because I know in a relationship like she's in, where there's a strife between her and her boss, so to speak, she needs a space to speak and be heard. So I didn't do any research or anything like that. I just scheduled a time, we sat down and talked.
And other than your apparent empathy and ability to listen and figure out what the conflict was, do you know why you were selected to do this in comparison or contrast to someone else?
Yeah, I think, at Froedtert South, we don't have like a medical director per se or a chief medical officer, but as a staff vice president, we are often assigned duties that are close to our skill set. You could take COVID, for example. I'm not a COVID expert, but during the last year, I had a significant role in leading our response to that, even though it's not strictly part of my job description. So again, this is similar to that. Being a practicing physician with some administrative role, that would be why I was selected to go.
And about how long after you had your 30-minute meeting with Ms. Ventura did you meet with Ms. Sherry?
I think it was pretty quick, within a week.
How long was that meeting?
That meeting was probably about an hour.
Where was that held?
In my office.
Was it recorded in any manner?
Not that I'm aware of.
And what did you say to Ms. Sherry and what did she say to you as precisely as you can recall?
Well, I don't think I said a whole lot, but first of all, what I recall is her sharing with, and quite tearfully at times, she was not unaffected by the way she was being treated by Dr. Sivadosan. But what I remember her sharing with me is specific instances, say 5 or less. I don't say that. So about 5 examples of situations where she felt she was treated disrespectfully or there's verbal abuse. And I do remember at the end of that conversation her being aware that she had lost unjustifiably Dr. Sivadosan's trust. So that's something that
just a moment. I think we've lost our administrative law judge.
Is anyone checking their emails to see if we have something potentially from the judge on this?
I have not received an email from her.
I don't know what happened.
Okay,
Okay, sorry, we're gonna have to back up just a little bit. My computer just decided it was going to reboot without any warning. So the last thing I have in my notes is that I was making notes from Dr. Trimark's testimony. He learned subsequently of such concerns, and I think those are clinical concerns from the line above it, from meeting with complainants. So that's the last thing I have in my notes. So if we
Okay.
can start from that point.
sure.
Okay.
And Dr.
And because we,
Trimark,
hold on. It looks like we are recording. So that's, I don't know how that's, yeah, we're recording. So,
okay.
okay, so go ahead.
Dr. Trimark, I believe you said that you met with Ms. Sherry for an hour approximately,
Yes,
and you listened to Ms. Sherry, who identified some instances of when Dr. Zavidazan acted improperly in the workplace. Did I understand that correctly?
yes.
And do you remember any of the instances that she identified?
So I don't remember, specific details, but there were patterns of just verbal abuse in the operating room and sometimes in the clinic in front of other people. And that was particularly, hurtful for Charnay. And that in these instances, Charnay didn't believe that she had done anything wrong to deserve, that verbal communication she was receiving.
Did Ms. Sherry identify abusive treatment by the doctor against other individuals?
That was not part of my conversation with her. I mainly focused on hearing from her about her situation.
Did Ms. Sherry provide you with any documentation?
She may have had notes with her, but nothing was provided to me to take with me that I recall.
Was it during this first meeting with Ms. Sherry that lasted about an hour that she talked about clinical concerns?
It's certainly possible, but there was definitely a second meeting where those clinical concerns were expressed. I just can't remember how much of it was part of the first meeting.
Do you remember anything else that was discussed in the first meeting?
No, I think that's most of it.
And then what was the next thing you did in connection with Dr. Zavidazan after this meeting ended?
So I met with Dr. Sividasan, again at Susan's direction, to hear her side of the story and understand her perspective on the relationship.
How long was that meeting?
Probably about the same, 45 minutes to an hour, something like that.
And what did Sividasan say to you in that meeting?
She basically shared with me her concerns about her working relationship with Charnay, and that she didn't feel like she could trust Charnay because either Charnay wasn't giving her information she needed, or Charnay was doing things she didn't approve of.
Did she say that Ms. Sherry had worked out, performed treatment outside of her practice area?
That was her belief, and she did say that.
And was that in regard to her actually operating on a patient without Dr. Svidazan present?
The only instance I recall Dr. Sivadasan being upset about, Charnay would have been working alongside the trauma surgeon providing emergent care to a critically ill patient. And Dr. Sivadasan was not there because she was still en route.
Did you ask Dr. Sivadasan what she expected Ms. Sherry to do under those circumstances?
I don't think I had to ask her. I believe she volunteered it. So no, I didn't ask her.
What did she say or Ms. Sherry should have done instead of assisting the trauma surgeon for a critically ill patient?
Yeah, she said that she shouldn't have done anything, and just waited for Dr. Sivadasan to get there.
Okay, and did you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I did not find myself agreeing with that position.
Why was that?
Because there was a trauma surgeon of record there who welcomed Charnay's assistance, and it did not violate any policy or procedure for her to do that.
Did Dr. Sivadasan provide any examples of Ms. Sherry not providing information to her?
I don't remember specific examples, just her sense that she wasn't getting the updates she needed regarding the patient's labs or vital sign changes, either in the hospital or during the clinic visits, things like that.
Do you remember anything else discussed between you and Dr. Svidazan during that conversation?
No, I don't.
Did the doctor give you any documentation during that meeting?
No, no documentation.
Okay, and did you reach some conclusion after speaking with both individuals?
Well, I think it's safe to say I had quite a few conclusions. One would be that I was aware that there was significant relational break in the relationship. There was a loss of trust. And I think that was the overarching concern I walked away with. And how do we go about, mending that? Is it mendable? What do you do next? That's the main thing I took away.
Did you have any clinical concerns after speaking with both individuals?
At that point, I didn't have significant clinical concerns, no.
What happened next after you concluded your meeting with the doctor?
So then I would have met again with Susan Ventura to give her an update on the conversation.
How long was that meeting?
Probably about a half hour, not long,
Where was that meeting held?
in Susan's office.
Was it recorded in any manner?
No,
Did you provide Ms. Ventura with any documentation, memo, anything like that?
no.
What did you say to Ms. Ventura and what did she say to you during that 30-minute meeting as precisely as you can recall?
So I remember more what I said, which was I shared my concern about this lack of trust that had developed, this breach of trust, and I had concerns about how we might be able to repair that. That would be the main thing that I shared with Susan at that meeting.
Did you give suggestions as to how to repair it?
I wasn't feeling too optimistic, so I can't recall if I did suggest anything specific.
Was it your conclusion that the breakdown in the relationship was irreconcilable at that point?
I felt that way, yeah.
And did you relate that to Ms. Ventura?
Yes.
And at the conclusion of that meeting, did Ms. Ventura state what the next step would be?
I do not remember at that particular meeting. And I think it wouldn't have surprised me if she didn't suggest it, since I'm just reporting back news that it's probably not the best news. So I don't recall.
When was the next time you had anything to do with Dr. Sivadathan?
Well, I could have seen her in the hall because we're both practicing clinicians, for example. So I'm certain the next setting would have been seeing her either on the ward, seeing patients, or, passing in the hall.
Okay. When was the next time you had any information that was negative about Dr. Sivadathan?
I think the next one would have been when I met with Charnay a second time.
What was your purpose for meeting with her a second time?
No, I do not remember who called the meeting, but I know Charnay wanted to share some clinical concerns with me.
Was it just the two of you?
Yes, it was.
And did Ms. Sherry during that meeting provide you with documentation?
I don't recall, but I know she was speaking from notes. I remember that.
Did she provide you with the documentation?
I don't think so.
How long was the meeting?
Probably about a half hour, 45 minutes.
Was it recorded in any way?
No.
Were there any clinical concerns raised by Ms. Sherry in that meeting that stand out in your mind?
No, there's not an individual concerns that stands out, but she probably brought forth 4 or 5 concerns that at the end of the meeting I felt needed to be looked into, and I shared that with her.
Was that 4 or 5 concerns among several others or in total?
That would have been, from my perspective, total. That was all I knew about, was the 4 or 5 she shared with me.
Did you take steps to look into those 4 or 5 concerns?
So I personally did not. What I did do was make sure that the medical staff was aware so that appropriate review could occur.
And who was that in particular that you made aware?
So in the medical staff office, which is run by Nick Galich, and then also the president of the system, Rick Schmidt.
So do I understand that you told Nick Galich and Rick Schmidt that there were 4 or 5 clinical concerns about Dr.
Objection.
Sivadathan?
I think you're misconstruing the testimony. You're saying medical concerns. And you're giving the witness the testimony that he hasn't given on the record.
Okay, so we back up and start over?
Are clinical concerns synonymous with medical concerns?
Yeah, quality, clinical outcomes, Yeah, in the
Okay.
practice of medicine. Yep.
And did I understand your testimony to be that you didn't look into those 4 or 5 medical concerns personally, but you made the medical staff aware, and that those individuals that you made aware were Nick Galich and Rick Schmidt?
Right.
Okay. And did you tell Misters Galich and Schmidt what you wanted to have done in terms of looking into those 4 or 5 clinical concerns?
No, I wouldn't have done that because it wouldn't be necessary for me, when raising concerns, to tell them what should happen next.
Okay, what did you expect would happen next?
That there would be, they would be